South African President FW De Klerk left a last message of apology to the nation for atrocities caused by apartheid. In the video, De Klerk says that South Africa's constitution has come a long way. But has it? To unpack the last message by De Klerk, we're joined by Xolelwa Kashe-Katiya, who's the Director and Project Manager at Mistra, South Africa. Thank you very much, Makatiya, for joining us this afternoon. So much has been said about the Constitution of South Africa being amongst the best in the world. Is it?
Good afternoon, Dudu, and thank you for having me, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. Well, this is a very contested subject, this idea of this constitution of ours, although it is agreeably lauded as the best in the world. And this is really specifically around, issues of addressing inequality. As you know, that history has led us to being the most unequal country in the world. But also there's a strong emphasis on it, like on human rights, which is something that sets it apart from other constitutions in the world. I mean, you'd see the U.S. Constitution is the oldest and so on. You find like the one from Ireland is also considered to be progressive, but ours, this emphasis on human rights is what has made it to be regarded as being progressive. However, there is still a lot of wrestling over the Constitution, and this is something that we found in our research as part of building the scenarios, the Indlela Miti scenarios 2030, wherein at least two of the variables speak specifically to this point. There is variable number 17, for example, which speaks to how South Africans will continue wrestling over the Constitution. And as a result, this puts national identities in a flux, because constitutions are supposed to be informed by our values, collective values, the idea of nationhood, and also a common vision. But we find that as South Africans, we're still struggling that, and hence this wrestling over the constitutions. But I mean, as much as there's lots of criticisms, we cannot take away from some of the successes that we can even look at.
Let's take a look at some of the successes then.
I mean, for example, the Constitution has been used to hold government to account. It has allowed media freedom. You look at, for example, the spaces that you yourself are operating in. There is, significant media freedom in South Africa compared to other countries, in particular other African countries. We also have Chapter 9 institutions that were formed as a result, and those have also served as watchdogs. We have progressive approaches to having a look at laws around sexual misdemeanor, but also at the same time, the Constitution has been used to also influence avoiding extremism in our country. One of the key examples of how the Constitution was mobilized was in the ensuring that antiretroviral drugs were available to pregnant women. However, I mean, when you look at some of the weaknesses, then you find that it can be difficult because the Constitution still has not dealt with inequality in our country. Some sectors of our society still regarded as, a product of that compromised settlement during our transition. And also others would even say it only serves to entrench white privilege. And that's why now you would see those kinds of debates, coming up every time there's moments such as this one with the passing of De Klerk and his statements. Then you find that there's moments of rupture where South Africans are having this debate or contestation around whether the Constitution is indeed, useful, or does it serve all, or is it not serving us equally? There's still going to be interesting conversations, where the Constitution has to be utilized. The debate around land reform, that is also going to give us an opportunity as a society to actually, test our Constitution. But also the issue of traditional authorities, their role in a constitutional democracy. So I suppose, also we must remember that the Constitution is not cast in stone. So it has to be tested, and through testing it, as observed where there were successes, using the Constitution. That are still, it is a continuous process, but it also requires all of us as citizens to be deeply engaged, to be informed about these processes.
The Constitution has to be tested. There is a school of thought that suggests that, 27 years post-democracy, perhaps it's time to, get further engagement. There are some people who are only now learning a lot about who they are and where they come from, and who would like to contribute towards where we are going by changing the Constitution. Are there thoughts?
Well, I think there has to be a conversation, a broad conversation among South Africans, because once again, I had mentioned before that, the human rights approach to our Constitution was informed by our history. So the historical context then becomes important, because as South Africans, we have not been able to find that unifying factor wherein, first and foremost, we have a common understanding of where we come from. Because even right now, as observed during the course of this week, we have all sorts of different conflicting narratives about the history of South Africa, in particular that moment of transition. Others would say it was a compromise. Others would say it was a moment of selling out. So how do we then engage with where we come from? Because our successes and failures are going to be informed of that. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board to actually instill a sense of, understanding. And it is difficult to have, 100% objective historical perspective, but that there needs to be a driver to that. There needs to be leadership that leads the process of getting all South Africans to understand, and that way we can maybe find each other and find a way to find a common vision, which then is forward-looking and can inform then ways in which the Constitution is amended. Because right now, with all these diverse demands and perceptions and perspectives, it becomes difficult, because then whose rights would be regarded above whose rights? And at the moment, the way it's seen is that if you are privileged or part of the elite, then you can effectively utilize the Constitution. However, if you're part of the majority, which is poor and disadvantaged, then you are unable to have the Constitution working effectively for you. Essentially, you don't have a voice to even influence the process of changing that Constitution.
Ms. Xolelwa Kashe-Katiya, always a pleasure being in conversation with you. She is the project manager and director at Mistra, South Africa. Engos.